In 2016, China became the largest issuer of bilateral loans. Well, now those bills are coming due. A recent report is warning 75 of the poorest recipients of those loans will be on the hook for record sums of money this year and for the next decade. It's raising concerns that China is trying to create debt traps to help exert influence in particular countries with critical minerals. Joining us this morning is Charles Burton. He's a senior fellow at Synopsis. It's a global China-focused think tank. Good morning. Welcome to Your Morning.
Good morning.
So back in 2010, China started this lending spree and became a key banker for countries who were in need of financing. And then 15 years later, the 46 least developed countries China loaned that money to are now using about 20% of their tax revenues just to service those debts. That's according to the Lowry Institute. Why do you think China lent money to those countries in the first place?
Well, after Xi Jinping became the chairman of the Chinese Communist Party and president of the state, he had an ambitious program, which is called the Community of the Common Destiny of Mankind, which is that by about 2050, China will become the dominant superpower on the planet in the context of the decline of the United States as a global power, which of course is what we're seeing now under Donald Trump. And the Belt and Road Initiative that you referred to is the economic part of this, where China is providing loans and grants to nations around the world to develop port facilities and transportation infrastructure to bring minerals and other commodities into China. So all those belts and roads end in China. And the terms of their loans in particular, which is what we're talking about this morning, are much looser than, say, the World Bank or the Asian Development Bank, in the sense that there aren't a lot of restrictions over corruption, removal of the money to Swiss bank accounts by dictators, and the assessment of the projects is sometimes such that third world countries are paying for projects which aren't really feasible. So we have a situation now, as you say, 10 years later, where a lot of those projects that were built are unable to be repaid to China under the terms of the agreements. Some of them, weren't economically feasible. Some of them have lost money because they weren't well designed, and some of them are because the money has disappeared into corruption. So it puts these third world countries in a very challenging situation, particularly in the context of the Trump administration's withdrawal of foreign aid. Right. Under his rule. So they're being hit by China demanding the money back and the U.S. not providing aid that they'd given previously.
Charles, there are already some examples of countries that are struggling to repay these debts. What's happening to them?
Well, I think that, in the past, China has been prepared to extend additional loans or loans forgiveness, particularly for those countries, as you referred to earlier, that provide critical minerals and other benefits to China, ports that are particularly strategic that China could use in future for blue water Navy operations, submarines, and so on as part of this grand world domination plan. But the ones that haven't been able to repay, in some cases, for example, in Sri Lanka, China was able to extract a 99-year lease on a major port. In other cases, they're demanding that countries provide China with natural resources to compensate for the lack of loans. And under the current conditions of the very serious decline in the Chinese economy, China's really not able to extend further loans and needs that money back for their domestic purposes. So it's like a perfect storm and disastrous for third world nations that, as we know, are suffering from difficulties in providing their people with security and health benefits and the ability to lead dignified lives in relative prosperity and alleviating the terrible poverty that exists in so much of our planet.
The Lowry report characterized it this way, that China went from one of the biggest lenders to one of the biggest debt collectors. In 2016, they provided $50 billion in bilateral loans. It's provided more in the years since. What kind of effect will this have on its debtor countries, not just this year, but when we look ahead in the next decade? And how does that play into that plan that you laid out earlier?
Well, I mean, the total expenditure in China in the Belt and Road Initiative since it really got going about 2013 is about 1.2 trillion US dollars.
Wow.
And the amount of outstanding debt is estimated to be about 385 billion. So this initial 22 billion is just really the top of the iceberg. And of course, it's terrible for those countries to be subject to these debts and possible coercion by Beijing. And in terms of the international aspect, China is demanding that those countries support China in international affairs, providing them with military advantages and supporting China in international agencies like the UN. And so it does help fulfill China's overall plan to replace the United States as the global hegemon, as it's put. So, it's all pretty bad news when you get down to it. And I think the main solution would be for the West to become much more proactive in assisting those countries to get them out of this mess that they've been coerced into by the People's Republic of China regime.
Senior fellow at Synopsis, Charles Burton, great to have your perspective this morning. Thanks for coming on.
Good to speak with you.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.